Some students started talking to her more. Not everyone, but a few who were curious and friendly. She joined a group for a science project and impressed the teacher with her ideas. Even Lily started introducing her to more people, but the bullies didn't stop. They seemed to get more annoyed that Imani didn't react. One afternoon in the hallway, the tall boy intentionally bumped into her shoulder, making her drop her books. "Oops," he said with a grin. Imani looked at him steadily. "You should be careful," she said quietly. He laughed. "Or what?" She bent down, picked up her books, and walked away without another word. But her calm expression stayed in his mind longer than he expected. There was something about the way she looked at him. Not afraid, not angry, just sure of herself. That night she trained again, longer than usual. Each motion felt like a release, a way to let go of everything without saying a word. Her kicks sliced the air cleanly, her strikes sharp and focused. When she finished, she bowed deeply, her breath steady. She whispered to herself again, "Stay calm. Always stay calm." Outside, the moonlight poured through the garage window, casting a long shadow across the mats. She looked at her reflection in the small mirror by the wall. The girl staring back wasn't scared anymore. She was patient. She was ready, and even though she didn't know it yet, the moment would soon come when that quiet strength, the one she carried in silence, would be tested in ways that would change everything. Next week at Riverbend Middle started quietly for Imani. The Uriki morning sun shone through the classroom windows as she took her usual seat, feeling a little more comfortable than before. She had started to recognize faces, remember names, and even smile at a few people who smiled back. It wasn't perfect, but she was settling in. Still, something lingered in the air, the kind of tension she could feel without anyone saying a word. The bullies, especially the blonde girl and her two friends, hadn't stopped watching her. Every time Imani walked down the hallway, she could sense their eyes following her, waiting for a reaction. She had learned not to give them one. One afternoon during history class, the teacher asked the students to form study groups for an upcoming project. Imani was partnered with Lily and two others, a quiet boy named Ben and a girl who barely spoke. They decided to meet in the library after school. When the bell rang, Imani walked with Lily through the crowded hallway. They laughed softly about how hard the project seemed, trying to find some humor in the heavy workload. But then, near the lockers, they saw the same trio leaning against the wall, waiting like they had been expecting her. The blonde girl smiled, that same mocking smile. "Hey, new girl," she said loudly so others could hear. "We were just talking about you. You know, you walk around like you're too good for everyone." Imani didn't slow down. She kept walking. "I'm not too good for anyone," she said quietly without looking at them. "Oh, really?" the tall boy said, stepping a little closer. "Then why don't you ever talk? You think you're better than us or something?" Lily moved closer to Imani, whispering, "Let's just go." They kept walking and the bullies didn't follow. But their laughter echoed down the hall, sharp and cruel. Imani's stomach tightened and her hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to ignore it, but it wasn't easy. In the library later, she tried to focus on the project, but her mind kept drifting back. She wasn't angry as much as disappointed. Disappointed that people could be so unkind for no reason at all. Lily noticed her silence. "Hey, you okay?" she asked gently. "Yeah," Imani said, forcing a small smile. "Just thinking." Lily hesitated before saying, "You know, they pick on people a lot. Last year it was another girl, but she moved away." "They just find someone new?" Imani nodded slowly. "That's sad." "Yeah, but don't worry, most people don't like them anyway," Lily said, trying to sound reassuring. Imani appreciated her kindness. Still, she knew that sometimes the meanest voices were the loudest ones. And even if most people didn't agree with them, they didn't always step up to stop them either. That evening, when she got home, her mom was making dinner. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air. Imani sat at the counter helping to slice vegetables. "How was school today?" her mother asked. "It was fine," Imani said after a pause. "Just normal stuff." Her mom gave her a look, that look only mothers have, the one that says they know there's more behind the words. "You sure?" "Yeah, it's nothing I can't handle," Imani said softly. Her mother smiled a little. "That's my girl." After dinner, Imani went to the garage again. She changed into her practice clothes and stood in front of the mat. The soft hum of the outside world faded as she began to move through her routine. Punches, blocks, stances. Her breathing became slow and rhythmic. Every motion reminded her of the balance between strength and peace. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Control your power. Never use it to hurt, only to protect. She practiced for nearly an hour before stopping to drink water. As she wiped her forehead, she felt calmer. Karate didn't just teach her to fight, it taught her patience. The next day at school, the tension returned. During lunch, she and Lily sat together as usual, talking quietly. But halfway through, the trio approached their table. The blonde girl leaned on the edge of it, pretending to be friendly. "Hey, we were wondering something," she said, twirling a strand of her hair. "Is it true what people say that you're from Atlanta? That's kind of rough there, right?" Imani looked at her calmly. "Every city has good and bad parts," she said simply. The girl laughed. "So you're like a city girl? That's cute. Maybe that's why you act so tough." Imani raised an eyebrow. "I don't act tough," the tall boy smirked. "Yeah, you do. You walk around like nothing scares you." Imani stood up, her voice steady. "I'm not scared, but I don't like wasting time with people who want to make trouble." She picked up her tray and walked away, Lily following close behind. As they left the cafeteria, Lily whispered, "You handled that so well." Imani shrugged. "It's not worth fighting over." But even as she said it, she could feel something shifting. The more she ignored them, the more determined they seemed to become. That afternoon, as she went to her locker to get her books, she found something inside. A small note. It read, "Watch yourself, new girl." She stared at it for a moment, feeling a chill run through her. It wasn't just teasing anymore. It felt like a warning. She folded the note and tucked it into her pocket. She wasn't afraid, but she was cautious now. Over the next few days, the whispers grew louder. When she walked into class, conversation stopped. When she raised her hand to answer a question, some students rolled their eyes. She could tell that rumors were spreading, small lies, twisted stories that people believed because it was easier than asking her the truth. But she refused to let it break her focus. She did her work, helped her classmates, and stayed polite. Her quiet strength started to draw respect from some students who saw how unfairly she was being treated. One afternoon, during gym, the coach announced that they'd be doing a light sparring activity, simple self-defense drills. Imani's heart skipped slightly. She knew how to defend herself, of course, but she had no intention of showing her skills. She didn't want attention. The students paired up again, and by chance, she was matched with the tall boy from the trio. The coach demonstrated a simple escape move and told everyone to practice gently. But when it was their turn, the boy smirked. "You sure you can handle this?" he said quietly. Imani gave a small nod. "I'll be fine." He grabbed her arm roughly, harder than necessary. She reacted instantly, not out of anger, but instinct. She twisted her wrist, stepped to the side, and in one smooth motion, freed herself exactly as the coach had shown. She didn't use force. She just moved correctly. The boy stumbled a little, surprised. The coach clapped his hands. "Nice technique, Imani. Good reflexes." A few students turned to look. The boy's face turned red, and the blonde girl standing nearby looked shocked. After class, they whispered to each other as Imani walked past. She could feel their eyes on her, but she didn't care. She just wanted to get through the day. Later that evening, Lily messaged her asking if she was okay. Imani replied, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired." But in truth, she was uneasy. She had seen the look on the bullies' faces, a mix of surprise and anger. She knew they wouldn't let it go easily. The next morning, the whispers started again, this time louder. "Did you see how she flipped him?" one student said. "Maybe she's like some fighter or something." The blonde girl overheard and laughed loudly. "Please, she probably just got lucky. Don't believe everything you see." But doubt had already crept in. People were curious now. They looked at Imani differently, not with pity or judgment, but with a hint of wonder. Imani noticed it too. She didn't like attention, but part of her felt proud, not because she embarrassed anyone, but because she proved to herself that she could handle pressure. That afternoon, she stopped by the park after school. It was quiet there, only a few kids playing and the sound of birds in the trees. She sat on a bench, closed her eyes, and let the calm wash over her. A small boy nearby was practicing soccer kicks alone. His ball rolled near her feet and she picked it up, passing it back with a gentle smile. "Thanks," he said shyly. She nodded. You're welcome. Something about that simple moment reminded her of why she trained in the first place. Not to fight or impress, but to find peace and balance. As she walked home, the sun was setting, painting the sky with soft colors. She felt tired but lighter somehow. She knew challenges were far from over, but she also knew she could handle them. The following days were a mix of peace and tension. Some classmates started being nicer, greeting her in the hallways, but the bullies grew colder, their eyes sharper. They didn't speak to her directly, but she could feel their resentment building. One Friday afternoon, as she was leaving school, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see the tall boy and the blonde girl walking a few paces behind. They were laughing about something, pretending not to notice her. But when she took a turn down a quieter street, she heard them following again. She didn't panic. She kept walking at a steady pace. When she reached the corner near her neighborhood, she turned around calmly. "Why are you following me?" she asked. The boy shrugged. "Just walking home. Same direction as mine, huh?" she said evenly. "Maybe," the blonde girl said with a smirk. "We just wanted to talk." "About what?" "About how you made my friend look stupid in gym," the girl snapped. "You think you're special or something?" Imani looked at her steadily. "I don't think that." "Then stop acting like it," the girl hissed. Imani's voice stayed calm. "I'm not acting." "You're the one who's angry." The girl blinked, caught off guard by Imani's composure. The boy muttered something under his breath, but they didn't move closer. After a tense moment, Imani turned and walked away, her steps slow and steady. She didn't look back. When she got home, her mom noticed the look on her face. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," Imani said softly. "I just need to practice for a bit." She went straight to the garage, slipped into her uniform, and began her training again. Slower this time, more deliberate. Every movement felt like a promise to herself. She wouldn't be afraid. She wouldn't let anyone shake her balance. Her reflection in the mirror looked different now, stronger, calmer, and more certain. The bullying hadn't broken her spirit. It was only revealing the depth of her strength. Outside, the night settled over the neighborhood. The sound of Imani's steady breathing filled the quiet room as she moved through her final kata, graceful and unshaken. And though she didn't know it yet, the moment was coming soon when her calm control would no longer be a secret, when everyone at school would finally see who she truly was. The days that followed were strangely quiet. The bullies still stared sometimes, but they didn't say much. Maybe they were planning something, or maybe they were just waiting for her to make a mistake. Imani didn't care. She had learned how to move through the day like calm water, letting things pass without letting them sink in. Each morning, she walked to school with her backpack snug against her shoulders, her headphones in, but no music playing. She just liked the quiet sound of her own steps. At home, her mother had started working longer hours, so the evenings were mostly hers. After school, she helped with chores, finished her homework, and spent time in the garage, practicing the moves that always brought her peace. One afternoon, while she was practicing, she heard the sound of someone clapping slowly. She turned around and saw Lily standing at the doorway with a smile. "Wow," Lily said. "You're amazing. I didn't know you could move like that." Imani smiled, a little shy. "It's just practice. I've been doing karate since I was little." "That's so cool," Lily said, stepping inside. "You never told me." "I don't usually talk about it," Imani said. "It's just something I do for myself." Lily nodded, watching her stretch. "You should tell people, though. Maybe they'd think twice before messing with you." Imani gave a small laugh. "I don't want them to think I'm scary. I just want them to leave me alone." Lily's face softened. "They're jealous, you know. You don't get angry like they do. It probably drives them crazy." "Maybe," Imani said quietly. "But I don't want to fight with anyone. That's not what this is for." Lily smiled. "I like that. You're strong, but you don't have to prove it." After Lily left, Imani sat on the mat for a while, thinking about what she said. Strength wasn't about showing off, and it was about control. Her father had always said, "A real fighter doesn't fight to win. They fight to protect." The next few days went by without much trouble. The bullies stayed distant, but their stares never disappeared. Still, Imani found herself feeling more confident. She answered questions in class, joined a study group, and even laughed with new friends at lunch. But one Friday afternoon, something unexpected happened. The final bell had just rung, and the hallway was crowded with students heading out. Imani stopped at her locker to grab her things. When she opened it, a folded piece of paper fell out. She picked it up and unfolded it slowly. It said, "We're not done with you yet. See you after school." She stared at it for a long moment, then took a deep breath and folded it neatly. She didn't feel scared, just tired. She had hoped they'd get bored and move on. After the crowd thinned, she walked out of the building. The air was cool, the sky soft with late afternoon light. She followed her usual route home, the sidewalk quiet except for the distant sound of cars. Halfway down the street, she heard voices behind her, the same familiar ones. She didn't turn right away. She just kept walking, calm and steady. "Hey," a voice called out. "New girl." She stopped and turned slowly. The blonde girl and her two friends stood a few feet away. The tall boy smirked, his hands in his pockets. "What do you want?" Imani asked quietly. The girl tilted her head. "We just wanted to talk." "You've been acting like you're too good for everyone." "I haven't," Imani said evenly. "I just mind my business." The girl crossed her arms. "You made my friend look stupid in gym. You embarrassed him." "I didn't do anything wrong," Imani said. "The coach told us to practice." "That's all I did." The tall boy's smile faded. "You think you're tough, don't you?" Imani met his eyes, her voice calm. "I don't think that." He stepped forward slightly, his tone shifting. "You should learn to show some respect." She didn't move. "I have respect for everyone. Even you." For a second, no one spoke. The blonde girl rolled her eyes. "Let's go," she muttered. "She's boring." They turned and walked away, laughing as they disappeared down the street. Imani stood there for a few seconds, her pulse steady but her chest tight. It wasn't fear, it was frustration. No matter what she said or did, they kept trying to get a reaction. That night she trained longer than usual. The sound of her kicks and punches filled the garage like soft thunder. She didn't imagine their faces or think about revenge. She just moved with focus the way she'd been taught. Every strike an act of release, every breath a reminder of calm. After she finished, she sat cross-legged on the mat, her palms resting on her knees. The night air felt cool against her skin. She whispered softly to herself, "Stay calm. Always stay calm." The next morning was Saturday. Her mom was already gone to work, so Imani had the house to herself. She cleaned, did laundry, and made breakfast. The quiet gave her time to think. Later, Lily called and asked if she wanted to meet at the park to study. Imani agreed. When she arrived, the park was full of sunlight and laughter. Kids played on the swings and parents chatted under trees. It was peaceful, exactly what she needed. They sat on a bench, books spread between them, pretending to study but mostly talking. Lily brought up the bullies again. "They're just jealous," she said. "You handle everything so calmly." "They hate that," Imani smiled slightly. "It's not easy. Sometimes I want to say something, but I know it'll just make things worse." "Yeah," Lily said thoughtfully, "but don't let them make you hide who you are." "I won't," Imani said softly. As they packed up to leave, Lily hesitated.
"Hey, if they ever bother you again, promise you'll tell someone."
"A teacher, or at least me." "I promise," Imani said. But deep down she already knew she'd handle it her own way. She didn't want to get anyone in trouble. She just wanted peace. The following Monday started normal enough. Classes went smoothly and the day passed quietly. But just before lunch, something happened in the hallway that changed everything. As Imani was walking to her locker, someone stuck out a foot from behind a corner. She tripped, catching herself before she fell. Laughter erupted from nearby. That same sharp, cruel laughter she knew too well. She turned and saw the blonde girl leaning against the wall, smiling. "Oops," she said mockingly. "Didn't see you there." Imani's heart thudded once hard. She took a slow breath and stood straight. "That's not funny," she said softly. The girl shrugged. "It's just a joke." "Then maybe you should learn better jokes." The girl's smile faded a little, surprised by the calm response. "You're getting brave," she said. "I'm just tired," Imani replied. "You don't have to like me, but you don't have to be cruel either." For a second, the hallway went quiet. A few students nearby were watching. The blonde girl's face flushed red. "Whatever," she said quickly. "Let's go." As she and her friends walked away, Imani turned back to her locker, her hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from the effort it took to stay composed. At lunch, Lily noticed right away. "What happened?" "Nothing," Imani said. They're just being themselves. You can't keep letting them do this, Lily said quietly. You're too nice, Imani smiled faintly. Kindness isn't weakness. After school, she went straight home and practiced again, her movements slower this time, controlled, deliberate. She thought about how people often mistook calmness for weakness, but she knew better. True power didn't shout or show off. It stood still even in the middle of chaos. The next few days stayed tense. The bullies didn't speak to her again, but their looks said enough. The whispers followed her from classroom to cafeteria, yet somehow it didn't matter as much anymore. She had found something solid inside herself, something they couldn't touch. Then one afternoon, as she was leaving school, Lily caught up with her. Hey, you want to walk home together? She asked. Sure, Imani said, smiling. Let's go. They talked about normal things, homework, music, summer plans. For a while, Imani forgot about everything else. But as they reached the main road, Lily's phone buzzed. She checked the screen and frowned. My mom's here early, she said. I have to go. You'll be okay walking the rest of the way? Of course, Imani said. I'll see you tomorrow. Lily waved and crossed the street, disappearing into a waiting car. Imani continued alone. The street was quiet, lined with trees. She walked calmly, lost in thought, until she heard it again. Footsteps behind her. Slow at first, then faster. She stopped and turned. The tall boy was standing there a few feet away. What do you want? She asked softly. He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Just wanted to talk. About what? He shrugged. You think you're better than us. You act like nothing bothers you. People talk, you know. Imani sighed. I don't care what people say. That's your problem, he said. You think you're untouchable. I don't think that, she said quietly. I just don't want trouble. He stepped closer. Then stop pretending you're perfect. Imani didn't move. Her stance was relaxed, but her eyes were steady. I'm not pretending anything. But you need to stop this. It's not worth it, he hesitated, caught off guard by her tone, calm, steady, confident. For a moment, the air hung heavy between them. Then he muttered something and turned away, disappearing down the street. Imani exhaled slowly. Her hands were steady. Her heart didn't race. She had handled it, and without fear, without anger. That night she sat on her bed, writing in her notebook again. Peace is not silence, she wrote. It's knowing you can fight, but choosing not to. She closed the book and smiled faintly. For the first time in weeks, she felt light. But somewhere deep down, she knew it wasn't over yet. The tension hadn't disappeared, and it was just waiting. And soon, that calm she had worked so hard to keep would be tested again, in a moment when there would be no time to think, only to act. The next week began with a strange quiet around school. People still whispered when Imani walked by, but the laughter had faded. Even the bullies seemed less confident, as if something had shifted. Maybe they were starting to realize that no amount of teasing could shake her, or maybe they were just planning something new. Imani didn't dwell on it. She kept her focus on her studies, her training, and her peace. Each morning she woke early, stretched, and practiced her breathing. Her father used to tell her that calmness was a kind of shield, one that no one could take from you. But peace has a way of being tested, especially when others mistake it for weakness. It was a Thursday afternoon when things began to build again. The weather had turned cooler and clouds rolled over the school grounds. During lunch, Lily leaned across the table, whispering, Did you hear what they're saying? Imani looked up. Who? The same ones, Lily said softly. I overheard them near the lockers. They're saying you've been talking about them to teachers, that you're trying to get them in trouble. Imani blinked in surprise. That's not true. I know, Lily said quickly. But they don't care. They just want a reason to come after you again. Imani sighed. Let them talk. I don't owe them anything. Lily frowned. Be careful, okay? I don't trust them. I'll be fine, Imani said. But even as she said it, she felt a quiet unease settle in her chest. After school, she noticed the group lingering near the gate. They weren't blocking her path, but they were watching. She didn't look at them. She just kept walking, steady and calm, her steps measured. When she turned the corner and they were out of sight, she finally exhaled. She hated that feeling, the way their eyes followed her like a shadow. Still, she wouldn't give them what they wanted. At home, she went straight to the garage and began her usual practice. The sound of her movements echoed softly, sharp but graceful. Each motion helped her let go of the tension, the fear, the anger that tried to creep in. She didn't know that while she was training. Someone had recorded her that morning at school. A short clip of her standing up to the tall boy, calm and confident. By evening, that clip had spread quietly among students with captions like, "The new girl thinks she's a fighter." By the next day, the whispers had grown again. People looked at her differently, not with cruelty but with curiosity. Some even smiled, impressed, but not everyone saw it that way. During gym class, the blonde girl's friend muttered something loud enough for others to hear. "She probably thinks she's some kind of action movie hero." A few students laughed nervously. Imani ignored it, focusing on the exercises. The coach, unaware of the tension, called for group drills. The students paired up. By chance, or maybe intention, Imani was matched with one of the bullies, the tall boy. He smirked as they faced each other. "Guess you finally get to show off those moves, huh?" Imani shook her head. "It's not about showing off." "Sure it's not," he said, mocking her calm tone. The coach blew the whistle and the students began the light sparring practice. It was supposed to be gentle, just movement, no contact. But Imani could see the look in his eyes. He wasn't planning to follow the rules. He moved quickly, stepping forward too hard, his hand brushing her shoulder with more force than necessary. She stepped back, steadying herself. "Careful," she said softly. "Come on," he said with a grin. "Don't be scared." "I'm not," she replied evenly. When he moved again, she sidestepped, using the same calm precision she'd practiced for years. The movement was smooth and effortless. He stumbled slightly, thrown off balance, and the coach called out, "Good defense, Imani." The class clapped lightly. The boy's face flushed with embarrassment. After class, he didn't look at her, but she could feel the heat of his anger as he walked out with his friends. Lily caught up to her afterward. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Imani said. "I didn't want to make him look bad." "It just happened." Lily shook her head. "You didn't do anything wrong. He just can't handle that you're better." That evening, Imani walked home alone. The air felt heavy, like the sky was holding its breath. She thought about how strange people could be, how they turned strength into something to fear and calmness into something to mock. When she reached her street, she noticed a car parked near the corner. 3 familiar figures were leaning against it, talking quietly. Her steps slowed. She recognized them immediately. She considered turning around, but before she could, one of them called out, "Hey, we need to talk." Imani stopped. "About what?" The tall boy stepped forward. "You made me look stupid today." "It was just practice," she said. "No one meant to embarrass anyone." He took another step closer. "You think everyone's laughing at me now. I heard people talking." "That's not my fault," Imani said calmly. "I didn't post anything," he glared. "You could have said something. Told them to stop." "I didn't even know," she said. "But I'm sorry if it hurt your pride." He froze for a second, caught off guard by her honesty. But then one of his friends laughed. "Man, she's trying to sound all wise. You gonna let her talk to you like that?" The boy's jaw tightened. He looked torn between walking away and saying something worse. Imani kept her voice soft but firm. "You don't have to prove anything. Just let it go, please." For a moment it seemed like he might. His shoulders dropped slightly, his eyes uncertain. But then, his friend muttered something again, and that fragile calm broke. He took another step forward, anger flashing across his face. Imani didn't flinch. She stood perfectly still, her hands loose at her sides, her breath steady. "Stop," she said gently. "This isn't you. You don't have to do this." The words hit him harder than anything else could have. He froze again, his expression shifting. Confusion, guilt, maybe even shame. Behind him, the blonde girl spoke up suddenly, her tone sharp. "Forget it. She's not worth it." He looked back at her, then at Imani, then turned away without another word. They left, their laughter fading down the street. When they were gone, Imani let out a long breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her heart was steady, but her chest ached. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt tired. Tired of having to prove her piece every single day. That night she told her mother a little about what had been happening. Not everything, but enough. Her mother listened quietly, then took her hands. "People who hurt others are usually hurting inside," she said softly. "You can't fix that for them, but you can refuse to let their pain become yours." Imani nodded. "I know, I just wish they'd stop." "They will." her mother said gently. People always notice calm strength. It takes time, but it changes things. Imani hugged her, holding on a little longer than usual. The next morning, she woke up feeling strangely peaceful. Maybe it was her mother's words, or maybe it was just relief that things hadn't gone worse. She dressed, ate breakfast, and walked to school, watching the sunlight break through the trees. At school, whispers followed her again, but this time they sounded different. Not mocking, curious, even respectful. Someone had uploaded a new clip from gym class, showing the moment she'd defended calmly and the coach's praise. The caption this time said, "She didn't even get mad." Instead of making her a target, it seemed to have shifted something. People were talking, yes, but with admiration. A few students smiled or nodded as she passed. Lily ran up to her between classes. "You're kind of famous now," she said, grinning. Imani laughed softly. "I didn't want that." "Yeah, but maybe it's good. People are starting to see who you really are." "I just want to be seen as normal," Imani said. "Too late," Lily teased. "You're the calmest person in school." They both laughed, the sound light and real. But even as things seemed to improve, Imani couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over yet. Sometimes the quiet before true change felt just like peace. That afternoon during study hall, the tall boy walked up to her desk. The room went quiet for a second, everyone pretending not to watch. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Imani hesitated, then nodded. They stepped into the hallway. He stood there for a moment, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I wanted to say, I shouldn't have acted like that. I was just mad. Everyone was talking and I felt stupid." Imani watched him carefully. His tone wasn't defensive. It was genuine. "It's okay," she said. "I understand," he nodded. "You didn't do anything wrong. I was just trying to impress people who don't even matter." "Then don't," she said simply. "You don't have to be like them." He looked down for a moment, then smiled awkwardly. "You're different, you know that. Most people would have tried to embarrass me back." "That's not who I am," Imani said. "I don't want enemies." He nodded again, a faint look of relief crossing his face. "Thanks," he said quietly, then turned and walked away. When she went back inside, Lily gave her a questioning look. "He apologized," Imani said. "Seriously?" Lily's eyes widened. "Wow, I didn't think he had it in him." "Maybe people change," Imani said softly. The rest of the week passed more peacefully than any before it. The bullies stopped bothering her completely. Sometimes she even caught them looking at her with a kind of respect they didn't know how to express. And slowly, the entire school began to see her differently, not as the quiet new girl, not as the target, but as someone strong in a way they couldn't quite explain. Imani didn't brag or act proud. She still sat quietly in class, still trained every night, still smiled when she passed people in the hall. But something about her presence had changed. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind that couldn't be faked. One afternoon, as she left school, she saw the tall boy helping another student pick up dropped books. For a moment, their eyes met. He gave her a small nod. She returned it with a faint smile. Maybe, she thought, strength could spread, not through fear, but through example. That night, as she practiced in the garage, her movements felt lighter than ever. Each kick, each turn, each breath was filled with calm certainty. She wasn't fighting the world anymore. She was moving with it. When she finished, she sat cross-legged on the floor, watching the last light of sunset fade through the small window. She whispered softly, "Peace wins, even when no one's watching." She didn't know it yet, but her quiet strength had already changed more than she realized. People were talking less about the drama and more about her grace, her discipline, her courage. And soon, even those who had once mocked her would find themselves learning from the girl they once underestimated. The weeks that followed were peaceful in a way Imani hadn't felt since she arrived at the school. The air around her felt lighter, and even the quiet moments no longer felt lonely. She wasn't invisible anymore, but she also wasn't surrounded by noise. People smiled when they saw her, nodded in the halls, and some even stopped to talk. It wasn't fame, it was something gentler like respect. She never went looking for attention, but it found her anyway. Her teachers noticed the calm way she handled things, and her gym coach even asked if she'd consider helping with a self-discipline workshop for younger students. The idea made her nervous at first, but she said yes. That small yes turned into something bigger. The following week, she stood in front of a group of middle schoolers in the gym, wearing her simple workout clothes and her black belt tied neatly at her waist. They stared at her wide-eyed, waiting. She smiled softly. "You don't need to be the loudest to be strong," she began. "Sometimes the quietest people carry the most strength. Real strength isn't about hurting someone. It's about protecting your peace and the peace of others." A few of the kids nodded. One girl raised her hand shyly and asked, "What do you do when someone tries to make you mad?" Imani thought for a moment. "You breathe," she said. "You remember that they don't control how you feel, you do. When you stay calm, you keep your power." She showed them a few basic moves, not to fight, but to stand tall, balanced, confident. The kind of stance that said, "I belong here," without needing any words. After the session ended, the coach clapped her on the shoulder. "You did great," he said. "You've got something special, Imani. You teach without trying." She smiled. "Thank you." Walking home that day, she felt something new, not pride, but purpose. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about helping others feel the same calm strength she had learned to hold. That night, when her mother came home from work, tired but smiling, Imani told her about the workshop. Her mother listened, her eyes soft. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "Your father would be proud too." Imani looked down, smiling. "I was thinking about him today, about what he used to say. That strength isn't in your fists, it's in your heart." Her mother nodded. "He taught you well, and now you're teaching others." They sat together in the quiet of their small kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space between them. It felt peaceful, real, like the world was finally catching its breath. But peace, Imani had learned, wasn't something you got once and kept forever. It was something you practiced every day, like breathing. One Friday morning, a few weeks later, she noticed something unusual when she got to school. A small crowd had gathered near the front steps. Curious, she walked over and saw that a younger student, a boy, was standing there with tears in his eyes, while a group of older kids laughed nearby. Something about the scene felt painfully familiar. Without thinking, she stepped forward. "Hey," she said calmly. The laughter stopped. The older kids turned to her, startled. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice even. "Nothing," one of them muttered. "Just a joke." "It doesn't look funny," Imani said. She looked at the boy. "You okay?" He nodded quickly, wiping his eyes. "Good," she said gently. "You can go now." He ran off toward the building. Imani turned back to the group. "You don't need to be like that," she said quietly. "You're better than this." They shifted uncomfortably, not quite knowing how to respond. She didn't raise her voice, didn't try to embarrass them. She just stood there, calm and steady, the same way she had learned to stand when others tried to make her fall. Finally, one of them muttered something under his breath, and they walked away. Lily appeared beside her a few seconds later, holding a stack of books. "You handled that perfectly," she said with a grin. Imani shrugged. "I just did what someone should have done for me." Lily nodded. "And now you're that someone." That moment stayed with her. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was simple. A quiet choice that made a small difference. That was the kind of power she believed in. As the semester went on, life started to settle into something that finally felt normal. Imani joined the art club, helped with the school cleanup project, and even performed a short demonstration at the school's spring assembly. A graceful sequence of movements that showed balance and control, not aggression. When she finished, the whole gym applauded. Among the faces in the crowd, she saw the tall boy who had once mocked her. He was clapping too. Their eyes met for just a second, and he gave her a small nod. A silent apology that didn't need words. Later in the hallway, he stopped her briefly. "Hey," he said quietly, "that thing you did up there? That was amazing," she smiled. "Thanks." He hesitated, then said, "You were right, you know. About peace. It's harder than fighting," Imani nodded. "Yeah, but it's worth it." He smiled faintly and walked away. Lily, who had been waiting nearby, shook her head in disbelief. "I can't believe he just said that." "People change," Imani said softly. From that day on, it was like the last bit of shadow had lifted. The school wasn't perfect, no place ever was, Mom, but it was kinder. The same people who had once whispered behind her back now came to her for advice or just to talk, and she listened. Always calmly, always kindly. One afternoon, while she was sitting under a tree reading, a younger girl from the middle school came running up to her. "You're the karate girl, right?" the girl asked excitedly. Imani laughed. "I guess so." "My brother was scared to come to school because people were teasing him," the girl said. "But he said you told him to stay calm and not be scared." "He said it worked," Imani smiled. "That makes me happy," the girl grinned. "He said you're like a superhero." Imani laughed again, shaking her head. "I'm not a superhero. I just believe in standing tall," the girl thought for a second. "That's kind of the same thing." As the girl ran off, Imani sat quietly, letting the breeze move through the leaves above her. Maybe it was the same thing after all. Not the kind of superhero who fought with fists, but the kind who showed others how not to. When the school year ended, the principal called her into the office one morning. Imani felt nervous as she stepped inside, but the principal smiled warmly. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "We've had fewer conflicts this semester, and several students mentioned you as a positive influence. You've shown everyone that real strength doesn't come from anger." Imani felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you," she said softly. "I just tried to do the right thing." The principal nodded. "That's exactly why it worked." She handed Imani a small certificate, Student of Courage and Kindness. It wasn't a fancy award, but to Imani it meant everything. When she got home that day, her mother framed the certificate and placed it on the living room wall. "Every time you see this," she said, "remember that the world always notices kindness even when it's quiet." That night, Imani lay awake for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened since she moved there. The fear, the doubt, the hurt, and the quiet victories. It all seemed so far away now, like a storm that had finally passed. She realized something then. She hadn't just learned how to defend herself. She'd learned how to live with strength. The next morning, she woke before sunrise. The house was still and peaceful. She slipped on her training clothes and went outside to the small patch of grass behind their home. The air was cool, and a thin mist hung low over the ground. She bowed slightly the way she always did before beginning her routine, and then moved through her forms, slow, balanced, graceful. Each motion felt like a story, a beginning, a struggle, a calm resolution. As the sun rose, her movements grew softer, until she finally stood still, breathing deeply. Eyes closed. When she opened them, she smiled. There was no anger left, no fear, no sadness. Just calm, steady and strong. She picked up her things and walked back toward the house, ready to start a new day. Later that week, on her last day before summer break, she and Lily sat on the school steps watching students run and laugh across the field. "You know," Lily said, "when you first came here, I didn't think you'd talk to anyone." Imani laughed. "I didn't think anyone wanted to talk to me." Lily nudged her shoulder. "Well, now everyone does." "You changed this place." Imani smiled quietly. "Maybe it changed me too." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink low over the playground. The world felt big and open again, full of promise. Before they left, Lily turned to her. "So what's next for you?" Imani thought for a moment. "I'm not sure," she said honestly. "But whatever it is, I want to keep helping people, maybe teach someday. Not just karate, but how to find peace." Lily nodded. "You'd be amazing at that." As they walked away together, the warm wind brushed through the trees, carrying laughter and the soft hum of life moving forward. For Imani, it wasn't about being the new girl anymore. It wasn't about what others thought or what had happened before. It was about what she had built. A quiet strength that could not be broken. And even if the world didn't always understand it, she knew what it meant. Strength was not in the fight. It was in the forgiveness. It was in the calm. It was in the courage to stay kind. Even when kindness wasn't returned, that was her truth, her real victory. As summer began and she stepped into the bright sunlight, her mother's words echoed in her heart. People notice kindness even when it's quiet. And this time, Imani believed it completely. She smiled at the sky, her heart steady, her spirit light, ready for whatever came next. Because she finally knew that no matter what the world threw at her, she could face it with grace, with peace, and with the quiet power of someone who truly understood what it meant to be strong. The summer air was warm and golden. the kind of air that carried laughter through open windows and made everything feel slower. School was over, but for Imani it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the start of something new, something quietly powerful. Each morning she still woke early. She didn't have to, but her body had learned the rhythm of peace. She'd step out into the backyard barefoot, feel the cool grass beneath her feet, and begin her stretches. The world was still then. Just the rustle of leaves, the hum of distant birds, and her own breathing. Sometimes her mother would watch from the kitchen window with a small, proud smile. She didn't interrupt. She just let her daughter move with grace, knowing that every motion told a story of growth and quiet triumph. After her practice, Imani often helped around the house or went into town to volunteer at the community center. It wasn't fancy, just a few rooms where kids could play, study, or escape the heat. The woman who ran it, Mrs. Green, had asked Imani to help teach a simple self-defense and mindfulness class. "I've seen how calm you are, even when things get messy," Mrs. Green said. "The younger ones could really learn from you." Imani smiled shyly. "I'd love to help," and so she did. The first day, a small group of children gathered in the dusty room. Some were curious, some restless, some shy. Imani stood in front of them, not trying to be impressive, just steady. "Before we learn anything," she said softly, "I want you to know something. What I'm teaching isn't about fighting. It's about finding peace, even when things around you don't feel peaceful." One boy raised his hand. "But what if someone's mean to you?" "Then you remember your worth," she said gently. "You don't have to prove it to them. Just stand tall, breathe, and stay kind. That's how you win." They practiced small moves, how to stand balanced, how to move with purpose. But mostly, they learned to breathe, to center themselves when things felt out of control. At the end of the first class, one of the younger girls ran up and hugged her. "You make me feel brave," she whispered. Imani smiled, her heart warm. "You already are." Word began to spread about her class. Within weeks, more kids came, and some parents stayed to watch, curious about the girl who taught peace through movement. Her quiet confidence drew people in. She wasn't loud, but she was clear. She wasn't demanding, but she was strong. Everyone who met her felt it, that gentle, grounded energy that made you believe calm was possible. One afternoon, as the class ended, Mrs. Green handed Imani a folded flyer. "The town's organizing a summer showcase," she said. "You should perform. Show people what you've been teaching." Imani hesitated. "Perform? I don't know if that's for me." Mrs. Green smiled kindly. "You wouldn't be performing. You'd be inspiring." That night, Imani told her mother about it over dinner. "You should do it," her mother said without hesitation. "You've come so far, sweetheart. Let them see what peace looks like." "I'm not sure people want to watch that," Imani said. Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. "People are hungry for peace, even if they don't know it. You might remind them of what they've forgotten." Imani smiled softly, thinking about that. The next day, she agreed to join the showcase. Over the next few weeks, she practiced her routine, and not a fight, not a performance, but a story told through movement. Every step, every turn represented something she'd lived through: fear, calm, strength, forgiveness. She wanted people to feel what she'd learned, that peace was not weakness, but courage. Lily visited sometimes to watch her rehearse. "You look amazing," she said one afternoon, sitting cross-legged on the floor. "You've really turned everything into something beautiful." Imani smiled. "It's not about me. It's about what comes after." "What do you mean?" "Maybe someone will see this and realize they don't have to fight to be strong." "That's enough for me." Lily nodded, her eyes soft. "You really are different, you know that?" Imani laughed. "Maybe, but it feels good." The night of the showcase arrived under a sky streaked with deep purple and gold. The small outdoor stage was set up in the park, string lights hanging between trees. Families filled the seats, children chasing each other in the grass. Imani stood behind the curtain, barefoot in her simple white training clothes, her heart calm, but alive. She could hear the crowd clapping for the act before hers, a local singer finishing her song. When her turn came, the announcer smiled and said, "Next, we have a very special performance from someone who has taught many of our community's children, not only discipline, but peace. Please welcome Imani." The audience clapped as she stepped onto the stage. The air was warm, the light soft on her face. She bowed slightly, then closed her eyes. The music began, gentle, slow, like a heartbeat. She moved with quiet strength, every gesture flowing into the next. Her body told the story of a girl who had been misunderstood, who faced cruelty but chose grace. A girl who had learned that calm was not silence but control, not submission but strength. When the routine ended, she stood still, her eyes open, her breath steady. For a moment, the park was completely silent. Then applause filled the air, loud, genuine, and long. She bowed again, smiling softly. It wasn't pride that filled her chest. It was peace. Afterward, people came up to her to thank her. Some asked about her classes. Others just wanted to tell her how the performance had made them feel. But the moment that meant the most came quietly, after most people had left. The tall boy from school, now looking humbler, more mature, walked up to her. "I saw your performance," he said quietly. "It really got to me." Imani smiled gently. "I'm glad." He looked down for a moment. "You were right about peace. I used to think staying calm made you weak, but it's harder than anything else." "It is," she said softly. "But once you learn it, no one can take it from you." He nodded. "I just wanted to say thank you for how you handled everything back then." She smiled. "It's all good now." He hesitated, then said, "I started helping at the youth center too. Just trying to do better." "That's good," she said, her smile widening. "That's how change starts." As he walked away, she felt something settle quietly in her heart. Closure, maybe, or something even deeper. In the following weeks, her story spread beyond their small town. Someone had filmed her showcase performance and posted it online with the title, "The Girl Who Fought with Peace." It started getting shared, first locally, then farther. People commented about how her calmness reminded them of what strength truly meant. She didn't pay much attention to the numbers or views, but she noticed the messages, and from parents, teachers, even other students from different towns. They wrote things like, "My daughter watched your video and said she wants to learn peace like you." It was strange and beautiful at the same time. She hadn't meant to become anyone's example. She had just been herself. As the summer came to an end, the community center held a small celebration for her. Mrs. Green gave a short speech. "Imani reminded us that real power isn't in shouting the loudest," she said. "It's in standing tall, calm, and steady, no matter what the world throws your way." Everyone clapped, and Imani felt her face grow warm. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, but she was grateful. Later that evening, when the celebration ended, she walked home under the stars. The night was quiet, and the air smelled like rain. She looked up, smiling at the sky. She remembered her first day at the new school, how lonely she'd felt, how she'd kept her head down, trying not to be noticed. And now, standing here months later, she realized how far she'd come. She hadn't changed who she was. She had just grown into it. When she reached home, her mother was waiting by the door, a proud look on her face. "You've touched so many lives." "Imani," she said softly. Imani hugged her. "I just wanted to make things better." Her mother smiled. "And you did." They stood there for a while, just holding on to each other, the sound of crickets filling the air. That night, Imani couldn't sleep. She sat by her window, the moonlight painting soft lines across her desk. She opened her notebook, the same one she had written in during the hardest days, and turned to a fresh page. She wrote, "Peace grows when you plant it in the places that hurt the most." She paused, smiling at the words, then closed the notebook gently. The next morning, she woke early again as always. She practiced her movements outside, the rising sun warming her face. She could hear birds, the sound of her mother's radio inside, and the soft rhythm of her breathing. And then, something unexpected happened as she finished. A small group of neighborhood kids came running up, laughing. "Imani, can we train with you?" one of them asked out of breath. She blinked, surprised, then smiled. Of course. She showed them how to stand straight, how to breathe deeply, how to move with control and calm. Their laughter filled the air, but their eyes were focused, serious in the way only kids trying something new can be. She watched them with quiet joy, realizing this was how it all began again. One small act of peace. Fast forward, when they finished, one of the kids asked, "Will you teach us every morning?" Imani smiled. "If you show up, I will." They cheered and ran off, promising to return. As she watched them go, She felt something in her chest, not pride, not even happiness exactly, but a deep sense of rightness. Peace wasn't something you kept. It was something you shared. She looked toward the sun, golden and bright on the horizon, and whispered softly, "Thank you." It wasn't clear who she was thanking. Maybe the world, maybe her father's lessons, maybe life itself. But she felt it deeply. Her story wasn't about being a fighter or a victim. It was about becoming someone who turned pain into purpose. And as the light grew stronger and the day began, Imani knew this wasn't the end. It was just another beginning. Another chance to stand tall, to breathe, and to keep teaching the quiet strength that had changed her life forever.